There are elements of doing business, there's elements of doing everyday life that require some forms of privacy.
A little bit of a contradiction to say, no, you can't use crypto privacy tools when people are out there laundering funds through suitcases of cash. There's three kind of big issues. One has nothing to do with crypto. It's that Americans are sick of data breaches. Privacy is a right. ZK proofs, the whole idea is you can verify the data and not having to supply all of the data to begin with. My biggest win from the conversation, now there's top-down messaging from the SEC that says everyone should be allowed to use these tools.
Government officials insist we will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
Welcome to the Money Block with Matthew J. Moore, the Bitcoin-focused program that's waking the masses to the fiat money Ponzi scheme. Money is changing, and your freedom is at stake. So stick around and learn how to empower yourself for this new digital age. Now, here's your host, Matthew J. Moore.
And welcome, America. Welcome, world. You are here at the right time, right place. This is the Money Block. We are syndicated coast to coast, and I just want to welcome all of you crypto newbies, lovers, and experts, because, man, do we have a great and phenomenal guest today that's going to unpack some great stuff for us. In fact, I just want to let you guys know that if you are watching, because we are on TV, radio, online, so if you're watching online, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, be a part of that conversation, because this topic, I think, is going to be relevant to you. A lot of us think about the topics of surveillance and privacy and freedom, and all of that is related to the topic of cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, things that are changing the way we do life, the future of our finances. But as a way of saying thank you for tuning in today, I just want to remind you that you'll see a QR code that pops up right over here. Be sure to scan that, get your phone out, and it's my way of saying thank you because it's a free digital download of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty, which hopefully will give you the tools, ideas, and principles to help prepare you for sovereignty in this coming digital age. And today's guest is perfect because, like I said, we're going to be talking about this ongoing debate between surveillance and freedom and privacy. And today's guest, her name is Katherine Kirkpatrick Bos. She's with a great company. She's the general counsel of StarkWare, and was recently making some noise in Washington, D.C. at an event that may have been a first of its kind. But Katherine, welcome to the Money Block. I'm so excited to have you on to talk about this topic. But I do want to give our listeners some background information on you because they may be unfamiliar. So before we go to break, just give us a quick preview of who you are and why you got involved.
I fell down the crypto rabbit hole. No, I was actually a kind of a law firm lifer. I was a partner at a big law firm, and I was doing white collar defense and government investigations, which means I was defending large TradFi entities in U.S. government investigations. So I saw a lot of dysfunction in traditional financial services. And I read something about crypto. I don't even remember what it was. And I realized how transformational this technology would be and the efficiencies that it would create in our TradFi system. So I kind of shifted my practice and ultimately left to become general counsel of a DeFi protocol. And then a centralized exchange for spot and derivatives, Cboe Digital, and then moved to StarkWare, in part because I really wanted to be with the OGs of zero knowledge proof technology, which I think we'll talk about on this program today.
Yeah, I do want to dive into that, but to tease our audience here, when we go to the next segment, we're going to dive into this. But the event that you were at in Washington, D.C. Was a kind of a first of its kind. It was a roundtable discussion concerning privacy and surveillance. Is that right? We got about 20 seconds or so.
Absolutely. The SEC's held 6 of these, but this is the 6th. I believe it was the most watched one. It was live streamed. And really, it's, as far as I know, the first time a regulator has held a public conversation on privacy.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, you heard it from her. We're going to unpack that. I'd like to ask her a couple of questions, which we will. So I want you to stay tuned, stay put, because we're going to dive deeper into this topic. It's going to be relevant to you, like I said at the beginning. But we'll be right back after this break. This is the Money Block. Stay tuned. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is round 2 of the Money Block. Yes, we are back in action. So, man, I hope you got yourself strapped in, because we're going to be covering a topic that is super, super relevant to everybody who's involved in cryptocurrency, digital assets, finances, and I'm so excited that you're here that I want to just thank you. Remind you that you'll see that QR code. Be sure to scan that. That is a free gift. It is a digital download of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. But we, in the last segment, we're talking to a guest who is involved with a company. She's the general counsel of a company called StarkWare. Her name is Katherine Kirkpatrick Bos, and she was involved in Washington, D.C. not too long ago with the SEC and a roundtable discussion. And we had Katherine share a little bit about herself and her background. But Katherine, people who are tuned in today, they may be unaware of StarkWare and the technology that is being produced there. So give us some background information on StarkWare and what zero-knowledge proofs are and how they relate to cryptocurrency.
Sure. So on the panel, it's funny. One of the panelists referred to ZK proofs or zero knowledge proofs as crypto magic, and I love that. So much like a lot in crypto, people think crypto refers to cryptocurrency. It refers to cryptography, which is kind of the underlying technology that supports the development of blockchains. So ZK, zero knowledge proof technology, is also cryptography based. And what it really means is you can prove something is true, like a fact or information is true, without showing the information itself. So my favorite example that I actually used on the panel is, say you have an attractive 21-year-old woman. She wants to go buy wine at a liquor store, and the clerk is hitting on her and he's acting creepy. Well, obviously she has to show her driver's license with her address to the creepy clerk. And so at a certain point, you have to ask why. Like, why does she have to show her address to prove that she's 21? And why do any of us have to supply all of this extraneous information to verify one piece of data? Well, ZK proof technology would enable her, there's a pin pad at the liquor store to input a few kind of vanilla facts, and boom, she has that age verification without having to supply her birth date. So this technology is live. It's being used in and out of crypto. It's actually being used in consumer-facing applications. And my company, we use ZK proof technology to scale blockchains to make them faster and more efficient. But the co-founders of StarkWare also co-invented ZK Starks and Snarks, which is pretty much the most widely used form of zero-knowledge proof technology.
Yeah, and I think all of that is going to be important for people moving forward because, there, as I was saying in cryptocurrency, in digital assets, there's been this stigma, this ongoing process in which regulators, lawmakers have really been building a narrative, not so much over the last year or two, but the regulators have had this narrative about, we need to crack down money launderers. We need to make sure that people aren't doing crimes. And my thought was, well, okay, I mean, if this is really about that, why do we have cash? And why is, there's ongoing debates, especially within the Supreme Court when it comes to, cryptography and what is free speech, code being part of that. But Katherine, I want you to kind of break it down for us because the adoption of digital assets, the adoption of these new digital ecosystems is going to come down to not necessarily lack of regulation, but more so because we need privacy. There are elements of doing business, there's elements of doing everyday life that require some forms of privacy. And these blockchains, oddly enough, they're open source, they're decentralized, they're a ledger that can be audited. And so that's kind of the irony of all this when regulators talk about cracking down on criminals, because, well, I mean, it's a whole lot more efficient to go after criminals when they use blockchain technology than it is cash.
The assets are far more traceable. You're absolutely right. And that transparency, there's pros and cons. And the pro is those assets are traceable. You can trace the flow of funds. Now, the regulators have a problem because they say, well, we can trace them until they go into a mixer or a privacy solution. But the reason that we're talking about privacy is there's three kind of big issues that have come to a head vis-a-vis privacy. One has nothing to do with crypto. It's that Americans are sick of like the epidemic of data breaches. You know, you get those letters, I get those letters every couple months. It seems like your data has been accessed. There's lawsuits. It's really scary because nation states are hacking our personally identifiable information. So Americans are saying there has to be a better way, and a conversation is happening in Washington about selective disclosure, meaning why are we providing all of this information for financial surveillance? The second, of course, is just, again, similar. Like, we have to get back to the point where, as Americans, and this is true in other jurisdictions, you know, privacy is a right. And in the US, it's a fundamental right as a mechanism of an expression of morals and values. You know, we should be able to donate to a religious organization or a political organization without everyone seeing that. And then third, which is most relevant for crypto, is you have traditional financial services moving on chain. Like, everyone's talking about tokenization, tokenizing equities. You know, we have a very real scenario where the equity market is on chain in a few years. Well, what does that mean? Is we can't have the kind of transparency that we're dealing with now because you have global hedge funds and asset managers that are not going to be okay with all of their trading and all of their strategies visible to everyone. It's not good for free markets. It offers the potential for market manipulation, front running. So there's a real economic need for privacy as these markets move on chain. All of that conversation is important. And there's pros and cons to the kind of financial crime question, which also always is going to loom large in the minds of regulators, appropriately so.
Sure. Yeah. And as we all know, criminals will always exist and bad activity will always exist. But the question here is, are we getting close to a world where we can utilize these privacy tools and have these features that you're talking about and these consumer rights that you've emphasized? I mean, we talk about companies wanting to pay employees with stable coins, not wanting to expose compensation data or other data related to their operations. How close are we to be seeing a world that's integrated with the technology that your company is producing?
We are there. You know, the technology exists. The biggest barrier to entry is regulators traditionally have relied on things like the Bank Secrecy Act, which mandates anti-money laundering and know your client procedures for regulated financial institutions. And traditionally, those entities have to do things like they rely on manual know your client, meaning like we need a photocopy of your driver's license. And they feel comfortable with that because they know that that's acceptable to regulators. Now, this is something we talked about on the panel. It's kind of ridiculous because we all know we can go online and using AI, we can generate a fake driver's license in seconds. We can generate a fake copy of our passport. So these processes and procedures are antiquated. And the technology like ZK proofs being one of a bunch of options that now exist to kind of modernize it, make it better. That exists, but a lot of regulated entities are afraid to go out there and accept these different forms, digital identity, all these options, because they don't have the blessing from US regulators. Mm-hmm. And that's what this conversation was for. That's why this conversation was so promising.
Well, and we've got about a minute or so before we have to go to break. So just let's break this down, though. You've stated this, and I believe this too. Wanting privacy does not immediately signal wrongdoing. What do you have to say to that?
Well, what was so amazing is the chair of the SEC, Chair Atkins, and Commissioner Hester Peirce, who both spoke before the roundtable, they both made that point. They said individuals should be able to use privacy tools without immediately coming under suspicion. And I took that a step further on the panel. I said, yes, and also builders should be able to build privacy tools without everyone assuming it's for bad guys, because that should be okay. There's a myriad of really important, valuable use cases for people seeking privacy that have nothing to do with money laundering or committing crimes.
So in your opinion, are we headed in the right direction when it comes to conversation in Washington, D.C. about this stuff?
Absolutely. The fact that this conversation took place, the fact that the regulators have signaled their openness to learning more about these tools is incredibly bullish.
I love it. I love it. Okay, well, that's given me a bit of hope here, but I do want to go deeper into all of this. In fact, I've got some juicy questions I can't wait to ask you when we come back from this next break. But if you're watching this, if you guys are tuned in to the Money Block here, we are, like I said, we are coast to coast. I want you guys to go ahead and you'll see a QR code. Go ahead and scan that. That is a book that's going to help give you the principles and ideas, some of the ideas and principles that we're talking about today that might be relevant to your future financial life. It's my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. Be sure to scan that QR code, get a free download. And you know what? If you got questions about all this, if you want to learn more, you can go to my website, mattjmoore.com. We're going to continue to produce great content for you that will be relevant, and you'll continue to learn and grow with us as we navigate this new space. And with 20 seconds or so, where could people find StarkWare? Is there a website?
Yes, we have a website. We have a LinkedIn. You can learn more about StarkWare. You can learn about StarkNet, which is the layer 2 blockchain that we are one of the core developers of. So you can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn.
All right, well, we'll give those links here in a minute. But guys, stay tuned, stay put, because we got more to go into. This is the Money Block. We'll see you in a minute. AI is here, money is changing, but freedom has never been more important. I'm Matthew J. Moore, the Money Block host on Biz TV, Amazon bestseller, and Bitcoin policy advisor. Book my up to 60-minute talk, Redefining Wealth and Freedom God's Way. I'll teach your church, business, or civic group how to secure money, freedom, and faith in the digital age. This is urgent, so I'm slashing my fee from $1,000 to $500. Cover my travel, and I'm there. Scan the QR code now. Spots are filling fast. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is round 3 of the Money Block. You have tuned in at the right time, right place. And man, do we have a great show for you today. We've been talking about a topic that so many of you guys are passionate about. You probably care about your privacy. You probably care about your finances. And if you are running a company, maybe a big company, you're going to care about the future of this technology as we develop with blockchain technology and the technology that's being produced and amplified through our guest and their company today. StarkWare is the name of the company. But before I bring our guest back and tell you who she is, I do want to remind you guys that we are broadcasting coast to coast on Biz TV, on radio, TV, and online. So if you're watching online, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, be a part of the conversation. Let us know what you think about this topic and how it is relevant to your life, because, hey, we all want to know. We want to hear from you. But also, you're going to see a QR code. Be sure to get out your phone, scan that QR code, download a free digital copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty, and hopefully it'll give you the ideas, tools, and principles to prepare you for this coming digital age. All right, guys, let's dive back into it. I have on the line a guest. She is the General Counsel of StarkWare, like I mentioned before, and we've been talking about this debate about privacy, surveillance that's ongoing in the world of digital assets. Her name is Katherine Kirkpatrick Bos, and she knows a thing or two. In fact, she was involved in Washington, D.C. with a roundtable discussion on the matter. So Katherine, welcome back to the show. I'm excited to go deeper into this. We do want to continue this because, you know, you've argued that privacy, and you've said this earlier in our earlier segments, it should be a basic consumer protection right. And it's essentially an economic necessity. But how has this perspective that you've championed, how has that been perceived by regulators? And you, like I said, you did touch on it a little bit, but can you expound upon that a little bit more? Is it a growing consensus, or is it still an uphill battle?
It's a great question because it's also difficult because there are so many different regulators with different mandates in the United States. So the fact that the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is, obviously a very influential financial regulator, not only convened this roundtable, but, the chair and two commissioners spoke in kicking off the roundtable. And they were all very positively inclined in their commentary about basically promoting privacy in the United States. And this was all started by Commissioner Hester Peirce. She wrote a piece back in August where one of the points that was most impactful to me is she said the US should be using a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, when it comes to balancing the needs for privacy versus the need to mitigate, financial crime. And so obviously the SEC, or at least the Republican commissioners on the SEC, are very supportive of this. The more difficult question arises is when you start considering the criminal regulators, like the Department of Justice, OFAC for criminal sanctions. There's always going to be a question when you're looking at privacy and how that conflicts with collecting data for financial surveillance purposes to kind of mitigate or prevent crime. But I will say, you made this point, obviously the most widely used mechanism for crime is cash.
We should just get rid of that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's just get rid of cash. It's the ultimate privacy currency. So it's a little bit of a contradiction to say, no, you can't use crypto privacy tools when people are out there laundering funds through suitcases of cash.
Which in reality, then, is it really more about tax collection? Is it really about, there are other ways you could look at it. And it's like, what are we going to use as the scapegoat? But let's continue this conversation. And I know that privacy and transparency can coexist. But for the viewers who are unfamiliar, we did describe it a little bit, but there's always people tuning in. Zero knowledge proofs, like the technology that StarkWare is pioneering and championing, it makes all these things possible. Expound upon this, how this is both applicable for users and regulators, the technology.
Yep. So ZK proofs, the whole idea is you can prove that something is in fact true. So you can prove that, this is your birth date or this is your social security without the social security number, without supplying your social or your birthday. And how does that all work? It has to do with cryptography. It's actually kind of complicated math that I'm not going to get into on this program. But the beauty of it is using these proofs, you can verify the data and not having to supply all of the data to begin with. And there is always kind of a repository of that verification data, but it's not out there for everyone to see and hack. And it's a lot more safer and a lot more secure. So this is something that it's a point of conversation, obviously, in and out of crypto, because it pertains to consumer data. One of the things that I think a lot of people missed is President Trump issued an executive order consolidating all of the data that exists within all of the different federal agencies in the United States. So, you have Veterans Affairs, you have employment, you have all of these different agencies hold data for different purposes, tax, of course. So he's consolidating all of that. Now, I completely understand why he's doing that. It creates major efficiencies. But the fear is also, well, wow, we've created this giant honeypot of American data that is going to be a target for North Korea and Iran and a bunch of other nation states. So this is also part of the conversation is, Palantir has the contract for that data. But are there cryptography-based solutions like ZK proofs that should be used to protect data in that circumstance or in other areas where you have these honeypots of data that are rife for exploit?
Mm-hmm. Well, and, I'm sure there was a dynamic conversation at the roundtable. As far as the discussion that went, what application? I know we talked about the zero knowledge proofs aspect, but is there any other aspect that excites you going forward, which allows users to control their data and verification? What processes or conversations have excited you the most?
Well, I love anything having to do with ZK proofs because of the multiple use cases. But the really exciting thing is that's actually just one piece of cryptography-based privacy technology. And there's also a myriad of creative solutions when you look at privacy tech. Like one of my other favorites is you have all of these privacy solutions, like the classic ones that a lot of people have heard of that have a negative connotation are mixers, right? You send your funds to a mixer. I always explain this to non-crypto people by being like, I've got money, you've got money, you've got money. We all have coins. We throw it into a pool and it gets all mixed up. Okay. Similar in cryptography. But a lot of the mixers that people are developing, they're calling it compliant privacy or smart privacy. They have mechanisms like a viewing key, which means it's private except to the person or entity or group of people that hold the viewing key. So people can go use the privacy solution, but if a regulator sends a subpoena and says, I think North Korea is using this mixer, then someone can give the regulator the viewing key. And therefore, nobody else can see it, like none of the other users, none of the other market, but the regulator has that data for law enforcement purposes. And that's one example of a lot of projects that are working on kind of responsible privacy or compliant privacy, whatever you want to call it, because they know that total privacy is going to be a potential lightning rod for scrutiny. They don't want the wrongdoers and the criminals coming to use their solution, particularly at scale.
Well, we got about 30 seconds, but so that does apply to warrants as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Warrants, subpoenas. There's a lot of legitimate reason why people want to unmask that privacy. Obviously, the question arises in the civil context with, for example, divorces. Like one party wants the financial transactions of the other party.
Yeah.
So these are tough questions.
Yeah. Well, guys, we are going to continue to dive into these tough questions, and hopefully you've been enlightened, encouraged, or given new perspective. But we have to go to break, so we'll be right back. We got more great conversation with Katherine, so I want you to stay put. This is the Money Block. I thank you so much for tuning in. You won't regret it. We'll be right back. AI is here, money is changing, but freedom has never been more important. I'm Matthew J. Moore, the Money Block host on Biz TV, Amazon bestseller, and Bitcoin policy advisor. Book my up to 60-minute talk, Redefining Wealth and Freedom God's Way. I'll teach your church, business, or civic group how to secure money, freedom, and faith in the digital age. This is urgent, so I'm slashing my fee from $1,000 to $500. Cover my travel, and I'm there. Scan the QR code now. Spots are filling fast. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. It is segment 4, round 4 of the Money Block. And I want to welcome all you Bitcoin newbies, lovers, and experts back to the show. And man, have we had a great conversation today. One that's probably tickled your fancy when it comes to privacy, digital assets, the future of surveillance. What does that look like? How does all this integrate for you personally? If maybe you're a business owner, entrepreneur, maybe you work for a huge corporation. Well, all of this is going to be relevant for you, especially in the near future. And we've had the perfect guest to unpack that. But before we do, I just want to remind you guys that because you've tuned in, I want to say thank you. And there is a QR code that you'll see right there. Be sure to scan that QR code with your phone. It is a free digital copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. And that topic is most certainly relevant to today's conversation. So be sure to read that, digest that, make it part of your life. But man, let's keep this conversation going. On the line, we have somebody from a company called StarkWare. She is the general counsel of this company, and this company is doing great pioneering work when it comes to privacy, scalability, and her name is Katherine Kirkpatrick Bos, and she was in Washington, D.C. recently with a SEC roundtable, and they've been talking about this topic. She was front and center, and Katherine, I want to pick up our conversation here. When we look at the United States and we look globally at other jurisdictions, how does the conversation stack up compared to what's going on around the globe in places like Europe or Asia? Are we being more innovation friendly than some of these other jurisdictions?
Yeah, great question. So I would have had a different answer a few years ago. I think it's been a huge change. Look, like one of the biggest problems with, for example, the Chair Gensler regime in the SEC is they really were not fans of crypto, and a lot of their policies really created an unfriendly environment for innovation. I would extend that even to broader tech. Now, this administration has done a complete about-face, and that's been the SEC's narrative in particular, is that they want to welcome innovation. that could help create efficiencies or speed in the financial markets. And in the US, the CFTC has been the same way. The CFTC, which regulates the commodities market, whereas the SEC covers securities, the CFTC has also made it clear that they are here to be innovation friendly. They're here to create an environment where builders can experiment without fear of unreasonable retribution. So in our markets in the US, we're on the right track now. We are saying, here is where you should build. Here is where you should innovate. The rest of the world, when you're talking crypto specifically, it's been a complete patchwork. Some jurisdictions are extremely friendly. Some have really, strategically positioned themselves. Like the Cayman Islands are a great example. They've made it very friendly for crypto companies to operate. They have a really sophisticated legal regime for crypto, and it's served them well. It's added an enormous amount of money to their overall economy, whereas other jurisdictions have repeatedly changed their mind, and some have been outright unfriendly to crypto and to privacy for that matter.
Yeah. Well, you've made the remarks that Americans and American companies, we need these privacy tools. We're ready for these privacy tools, but missing in this is just clarity, education, understanding. And it seems like these were very positive developments at this roundtable after all of these discussions and kind of what you said about, what you're seeing globally compared to the United States. Is this the most optimistic that you've been in a long time? I mean, more so than any other time.
Yeah, it's funny because I really think education is the key to unlocking like a further embrace of crypto generally on the legislative level. And I'm sure you felt the same way, but when I first got into crypto, the industry was seen as fringe. There was a lot of like nobody cares attitude in Washington, or there was just a overall attitude in Washington as this is for money launderers or scams or whatever. We have come so far. And a lot of that has to do with education. There's been a lot of people who've spent a lot of time on the Hill explaining the benefits of all of the underlying technology. Like this industry isn't about meme coins. It's not about scams. It's about creating a better system for what exists today. And we've come a long way with crypto assets, with DeFi. We are at the early stages of educating regulators on privacy tech specifically. And in some ways, it's easier to understand from a use case perspective, but more complicated technically, depending on what you're talking about. So I am super optimistic because I never thought we would be here at this point with the regulators convening a roundtable specifically to talk about privacy. And the best part too was the first half of the roundtable, and this is unique. They have never done this with any of the other roundtables. The first half was builders actually demonstrating the privacy tools. And there was a really cool spectrum. There was kind of Zcash, which is very cypherpunk, very original crypto, all the way to the Canton network, which is permissioned, institutional, it's DTCC's choice of chain. And so the first half was builders actually demonstrating how all of this works. The second half was a policy-focused conversation, which basically said, we've seen that this exists, we've seen the use, where do we go from here?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and on that panel included voices from, privacy-focused projects like you mentioned, Zcash, but groups like the ACLU. And so what areas of agreement or pushback stood out the most to you when you guys were talking about, privacy for individuals and overall surveillance?
Yeah, and they did a really good job on the policy-focused portion to also have a spectrum. You had Republicans, you had Democrats, you had kind of hardcore crypto people. You had an individual who was on the board of Zcash, for example. But you also had Carol House, who was a Democratic appointee and who was really advocating for more kind of permission privacy architecture. What's interesting is there was a lot of agreement. And even the kind of spicy discussion, there was mutual respect, which was fantastic. You don't always see that in Washington when people disagree. Yeah. And I would say there was some disagreement on how you do this effectively, like how kind of permissioned should these tools be and whether they should be mandated. Like a big point of conversation is, look, there's tools that now exist in and out of crypto, in privacy technology that can be applied to DeFi, for example. Like a great example is blockchain analytics. Like you can scan wallets to see if the wallets are sanctioned. So these exist. Should they be mandated? Should they be part of every project? Should they be part of every privacy protocol? A lot of people on the panel said no, because these projects have different uses and different use cases. And of course, they should be there when you're talking about institutional flows or regulated entities, but they shouldn't necessarily be there when they're talking about individuals who have no obligation to adhere to the Bank Secrecy Act, for example. So that was a great discussion.
Well, and you bring up a great point is, I mean, even in the world today and the technologies that we have today, there's a spectrum of what can be used, how it can be used, when it can be used. Why can't it just exist, all of it? You know, and these different ecosystems, you know, people have choice, people have the ability to participate in ways that they either need to or choose to.
Absolutely. And again, some people can use privacy or want to use privacy for things that are legal, but other people may not like them. Okay. Sure. Like there's a distinction there. You know, people might want to use privacy tools to you know, buy cannabis. Fine, it's legal in Illinois.
Right.
Other people may say, no, that's a drug, but this is what we're talking about. This is America. There's a spectrum of morals and values, and no one should judge another person for what they choose to do with their money, assuming it's legal.
Preach it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, okay. Well, so as far as your biggest takeaway from that conversation, we know you were optimistic. We know that there were a spectrum of people on there, but what was your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway is that, frankly, there's now an acknowledgement that this conversation needs to happen. And my biggest win from the conversation is that I think that now there's top-down messaging from the SEC that says, guess what? Everyone should be allowed to use these tools, and people should be allowed to experiment and build these tools. That did not exist prior to the roundtable. But, you know, Chair Atkins made that explicitly clear in his remarks. And it's going to make that, I believe, harder from the U.S. regulatory perspective to immediately come down hard on a project or on an individual with suspicion just because they're engaging with privacy tools.
Well, and for the viewers, give them direct places where they can follow StarkWare, yourself. How can they get plugged into the work?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow StarkWare on, we have a website, we have a Twitter, we have a LinkedIn, or X, I should say, sorry. Same with me. I'm K Kirk Bos on X, Katherine Kirkpatrick Bos on LinkedIn. And definitely engage. I think what StarkWare is doing is amazing because it's really on the cutting edge of this technology. I joke that I'm the stupidest person at StarkWare, and I'm fairly smart. So, and that's the best thing, is it's very invigorating getting to work with really brilliant people that are looking beyond the status quo and saying, how can we do this better? And how can we use highly sophisticated math that most of us will never need to understand to improve the lives of average individuals.
Yeah. And if you are watching this program and you're thinking, man, I am not even near where Katherine is, you know, I need you to just stay encouraged, stay curious, and start educating yourself. That's what it's about. Education. All right, guys, we'll be right back. We got to go to break. We'll see you in a minute. AI is here, money is changing, but freedom has never been more important. I'm Matthew J. Moore, the Money Block host on Biz TV, Amazon bestseller, and Bitcoin policy advisor. Book my up to 60-minute talk, Redefining Wealth and Freedom God's Way. I'll teach your church, business, or civic group how to secure money, freedom, and faith in the digital age. This is urgent, so I'm slashing my fee from $1,000 to $500. Cover my travel, and I'm there. Scan the QR code now. Spots are filling fast. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait. because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And welcome back, America. Welcome back, world. Man, have we been having a great conversation on the Money Block. Today has been a phenomenal episode, one that I hope you didn't miss. And if you did, you can always go back online and watch it on demand, because that's where we keep all of our content. You can go to mattjmoore.com. But, man, do we have a guest today that's been talking about this issue between surveillance and privacy and freedom? How does it relate to us personally, our businesses, the future of America entrepreneurship? I think you might be encouraged with what our guest has to say today. Her name is Katherine Kirkpatrick Bos. She's with a company called StarkWare, and she is the general counsel of this company and was involved with a roundtable at the SEC. So she's the right person to ask to have on about this conversation. And so Katherine, welcome back. I know that we've dived a little bit into all this in different areas, different aspects, but drawing from your background when it comes to derivatives, compliance, and regulated markets, how could the privacy innovations highlighted at the roundtable, things we've talked about today, how could this unlock a greater institutional participation and even competition in the marketplace without adding those heavy-handed rules that we were kind of afraid of?
It's a great question. And yeah, I was formerly chief legal officer of a CFTC registered designated contract market, which is a derivatives exchange for crypto. And DCMs are very hot right now because all the prediction markets are trying to get DCMs. I think it's really important when you look at institutional trading. There's a couple things that makes privacy absolutely essential. One, it's just competitive strategy, right? Like, it makes sense. Like, they need to have that strategy not open for everyone to see. Two, you need to make sure it's okay, and the retail individuals that are trading against institutions when it comes to, especially in derivatives, because retail can trade through FCMs and in other mechanisms in the derivatives markets. You need to make sure they're not at a disadvantage to the large institutions. And if everything's transparent, the big players can take advantage of tiny latency to front run trades. So you need to avoid that. You need to avoid creating a market where it's easy for those, not necessarily just the institutions, for anyone to manipulate the market. And all of this is a big question mark when everything is on chain, everything is transparent. Although we're also at a point where everyone is kind of getting to the point where they acknowledge, oh, wow, the future is 24/7 trading. The future is using, blockchains to improve the trading environment, the speed, the atomic settlement, the using tokenized collateral and derivatives. These are all huge advantages, and it's becoming harder and harder to disagree with these fundamental advantages. But all of that necessitates privacy. And how do you use privacy? How do you kind of actually add that component to trading on chain? You use the privacy technology that we were talking about at the roundtable. You use ZK proofs. And the beauty of this technology is the user has that option, but it doesn't disrupt their flow. It doesn't re-intermediate them. It doesn't create another layer of annoying UX. Like, there's a way to make this seamless.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and the one conversation that's been getting a lot of energy and probably will in 2026 is this conversation about quantum computing, the threat it has to things like Bitcoin, but the zero knowledge proofs, things that StarkWare is working on. Can you kind of speak on that a little bit? I mean, was any of that touched on with the roundtable? Because I know that there are elements to this technology that I believe you've said is post-quantum.
Amazing. And that's also incredibly exciting. So ZK Starks, the kind of zero knowledge proof technology or form of it, as I mentioned earlier, are post-quantum resistant. And that's incredibly exciting because obviously quantum is like the specter over crypto and particularly Bitcoin, right? And one of the things that my CEO is asked about all the time, because he is the guy when it comes to ZK Starks, is what are we going to do about this? He's not worried about it because his point is, look, cryptography is breaking new grounds every single day. Like, it's not like it's just sitting there and everyone's using it. It's the beauty of open source technology is these brilliant developers, they can take the technology that other developers created and they take it and they improve it and they improve it and they build on what exists. So that's compared to all other industries where everybody's constantly starting from scratch. It's like putting the best minds in the world in crypto, and crypto's had this huge intellectual reverse brain drain.
Sure.
And they're building on it and they're innovating it. So we already have technology that's post-quantum resistant, and you have every day cryptographers working on that technology to make it more resilient and ultimately secure when it comes to quantum technology.
Yeah, and when it comes to America, when it comes to our jurisdiction, can you speak to us, tell us about the future of crypto freedom, innovation, and America's competitive edge? Do you have any thoughts around that when it comes to the privacy versus surveillance issue?
The beautiful thing about America is ultimately when we get back to our base, this is a place for innovation. This is a place that has always rewarded freedom, innovation, free thinking, which free thinking aligns automatically with creative thinking and thus innovation. So it's always a fantastic point. People will find a way in the USA.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's why I love being here. But those viewers who are watching this, who may be new to this subject, who's learning, who's growing at the same time, give us some practical advice for the viewers. What should they be preparing for? What should they be looking for? How should they be educating themselves?
I mean, they should be listening to content like your show, frankly. And they should not be intimidated. That's the biggest piece of advice. Is it's funny how many people are intimidated by crypto generally or by these topics. A lot of times I've dealt with very smart people in financial services that are like, oh, I don't understand that crypto stuff. I'm like, look, you understand derivatives,
Yeah.
You can understand Bitcoin. So all that's intimidating is that a lot of people in this space use a different vernacular. They use different vocabulary. So sometimes you have to kind of learn the language first, and then everything kind of unlocks. So start listening to content, watching and listening to shows like this. And once you start feeling more comfortable with the basic concepts, educate yourself and get that confidence you need to engage.
Okay. And one more time, if people wanted to follow you, StarkWare, how do they get plugged in? All the links.
Absolutely. So you can follow us on X. You can follow StarkWare on X, on LinkedIn. StarkWare on our website produces a lot of great content. And you can follow me on X at Kate Kirkbos with one S.
I love it. Well, Katherine, this has been a great conversation. I thank you so much for joining me on the show. And viewers, if you like this, be sure to share, like, comment, subscribe, be a part of the conversation. Let us know, let Katherine know what you thought about her ideas today and what she's doing. But more importantly, stay tuned, come back, because we're here at the same time, same place. We'll see you guys on the next episode of The Money Block. Adios.
The opinions and suggestions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants and are not necessarily endorsed by program sponsors or any station, media company, or platform broadcasting this program. This program is a product of Moore Media, LLC. The information in this broadcast is not intended as investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, Moore Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program is not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, Moore Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk.